Indeed, a very warm welcome to This is the Business Hour podcast. And this is the place that you get to hear all the interesting conversations. And today, we'll be focusing on entrepreneurship, and we'll be focusing specifically on the tendering program. How do you get tenders? How do you bid for tenders? And we have a guest here who will be helping us untangle some of these issues and to also just understand the process and how it works and what are some of the key things that you need to know. And before we go into that conversation, first let's take a look at our day's quote. And our quote of the day says, when we purchase something, we are enriching other people. That is by none other than Sunday Adilaja. And as promised, we're going to have a conversation with Gatwiri Kithinji. And just a brief background of who she is. She's an award-winning entrepreneur of Kepsa in 2021. And Gatwiri, karibu to the program.
Thank you so much.
So one of the things that we really want to understand is, first of all, help us understand how you got into this kind of business. Because for the longest time, getting a tender or winning a bid for a tender has always been left for the quote-unquote big boys. So for you as a young person, as a young entrepreneur, how did you end up in this line of work?
Thank you for having me, Jimmy. So, I'm a managing director at HMG Works. I'm also a director at HMG Works Limited, having transitioned from corporate banking. That is where I was. That is where I learned the ways of the corporates and government. And I got attracted to work with government and the non-government organizations.
Yeah.
And so I made a point of looking for the people in my corporate banking portfolio who were already working with government and non-government organizations. Then that is where I developed the interest to work with government. And the best way to work with government is through the tender system.
Okay.
As a young entrepreneur, and I settled in well.
Yeah, and one of the things, or one of the conversations around tenders has always been where when there's a bid for a tender, already, let's say a certain ministry or a certain county government issues a tender, the perception has always been that that tender has already been given and this is just a formality. Is that something that you have experienced?
It is a total misconception amongst the Kenyan youth on how tenders work, because I can assure you one of the things that government has done is making sure they are able to pull the youth into the money-making system through the tender system. There are agencies which protect young people working with government. That is the AGPO program. So through the AGPO program, as a young character, you're protected by government in terms of the scope of works that you can cover. They are very wide, so you're not limited in terms of what you can apply as long as you have an AGPO certificate. AGPO certificate covers young people, that is the youth, women, and people with disabilities.
Yeah.
So once you acquire such certifications, when you're applying for a tender and you attach such certifications supporting you from government, and you go through the technical requirements, the legal trading documents that are required for you to trade with the government, it is as transparent as day and night. Okay. There is no favors. Yes, there's that extra mile of, you have to talk to people because it is what it is, business, and it is a social culture. That is what it is. So besides the technical aspects, you have to be social. That's how you win tenders.
It's a good thing that you brought up this yourself, the issue of you have to talk to people. The perception, again, I'm sure you're aware, is the fact that people will tell you you have to know someone in a certain ministry for you to get to win a tender. You have to know someone at high levels to be able to push for you to get that tender. What is the actuality in terms of these tenders?
It is like power. Power has godfathers. The moment you want to ascend to power, you need to look for the people with the power, with the instruments of power. So the first point is making sure you have the legal documents which allow you to trade with government. Then from there, now look for the godfathers.
What of those who do not have this kind of connection, who do not have these kind of godfathers to help push for you?
You do not have to have connections per se. The moment you pass the technical test is now where you go to look at who is the head of procurement, who is the procurement officer in this organization, who is the accountant. You have to create your own cartel in these organizations, and that is the truth. It doesn't just come. You're not given these opportunities. You have to go after them. Just like a character who wants power. Power is not given. You have to go take it.
And when you say you have to form your own cartel, for anyone who has been in the Kenyan space or within Kenyan business space, one of the things that you do not want to hear about is cartels.
Let us call them linkages.
All right. So I want you to take us through your journey in terms of the first tender that you applied for in government. What was that process like?
It was hectic because the first thing, you have to come up with your own company if you want to trade as an independent entity. Yeah. So the process of acquiring these papers from Kenyan government is not as cheap, And then for me, I registered the company in June 2019. Immediately, I left my corporate work. Yeah. But it took me up to October 2019 to get my first contract. I got a contract of 3,900. I made a loss, but I was happy. Okay. Because I saw traction. I saw corporate entities saying yes, and that is what I was looking for at the end of the day. Now, it's a different story. Because now there has been a lot of growth in terms of numbers. Yes, I started at 3K, but now I'm comfortable where I am. The numbers are okay and looking to grow further.
Oh, I would actually want to know what are these comfortable numbers. But let's move this conversation forward. In terms of, as a young person, of course, you're coming from, let's say, your first employment, or you're coming from internship, and you want to try your hand in this. What are some of the key things that, from your experience, one has to have or has to know in terms of generating a tender document and just the required paperwork to enable you to win a bid?
I think I'm going to start with the paperwork. What do you require really when you want to say you want to go after a tender? Let us go through the legal trading documents that the government requires you to have for you to trade. Not just the government, but even the non-governmental organizations. You have to have a certificate of incorporation. You have to have your PIN certificate. You have to have your tax compliance. And it has to be really you're paying taxes to the government because you have withholding taxes from corporates. So you have to demonstrate that you're filing your taxes. Then they give you an opportunity to trade with them. Then you have the AGPO certificates that I'm talking about, which then places you in favor as a young character who's trying to pursue business with government. Yeah. And now the business, you have to show the legality of, if I want to come visit you and see you, do you have a premise where I can come and see you? So you get these papers from like Nairobi County government in terms of business permits to operate. Then, from there is a very keen eye to detail when it comes to tenders because they issue simple instructions such as serialize your documents chronologically. So it can jump from a 9 to 12. That is not chronological. And that little thing can easily take you out of a good tender for no reason at all. Just that chronological word, So it's a lot of keen eye to detail. And in terms of those papers that I'm talking about.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the issue of financing a tender.
Yeah.
You've made a bid for a tender. You've won the bid. You have the tender. The tender, let's say, is worth 1 million shillings. As a young person, you do not have 1 million shillings sitting around. How do you finance these tenders?
The truth is, for me, I'm gonna start where I started, where the journey started.
Yeah.
It was difficult raising such monies. So what did I do? I constituted a board, and by board, I looked at financial masses of people who can actually come in to support me because I had the ideas, I have the clients. Who can I share my profits with? People who can actually generate capital for me. Now, besides private funding of the business, there are avenues to actually fund your tenders as a young character. And one of them is through the banks. For me, the banks have been so supportive because there are facilities, the short-term financing facilities that they offer to young people who are in the tender system. That is the LPO financing and also the overdrafts. Yeah. If your account really can show traction that you have certain clients, they can see certain checks coming in, they approach you. They tell you, you know what, we want to give you a 90-day facility to work with. I know approaching banks is not as easy, and it calls for a lot of consistency in terms of they want to see what you've been doing. They want to see your operations. Yeah. Are you consistent? Because if you're not, at the end of the day, they will not give you loans. There are many avenues of sourcing for funds, and besides friends, I know, which is also difficult amongst our peers as young people, but it just calls for that extra mile for sure. It's not easy, and I'm not saying it's automatic to be financed by the bank, but they are one of those avenues that if you really can show consistency in what you're doing, then they really come through for you as a young entrepreneur.
Okay. And again, here comes another question. I've gone to the bank.
Yes.
The bank is not willing to loan me the money.
Yes.
We've heard of cases, and we'll talk about this in a minute. We've heard of cases of delayed payments.
Yeah.
And let's say I had a loan, hoping that a certain tender is going to be paid in full so that I can be able to pay my loan.
Yeah.
How has that affected business? And what are my options when these things happen?
So a tender is never just a tender without scrutiny. Does the organization that you want to work for, does it have money? Does it have a reservoir for the work that they have actually initiated with you? Or are you looking to be pushed into a pending bill? As an aggressive young entrepreneur, one of the things that I look at is the quality of the institution that I want to work with. I want to see, do you have money? Or are you going to land me into trouble with my bankers? These are questions that any serious business entrepreneur will be looking at. So what I would say is that it's important to look at the quality of the organization. Do they have money? Look at the historical relationship with their vendors. What have been their pending bills before? How have they treated the AGPO company holders before? Those are the things that I look at. And by the time I'm actually assenting to a contract with any corporate, I have to ensure that I've talked to the person in accounts. I have to make sure that my money is not going to stall. And it is the advice I could give to anybody. A tender is not just a tender. It's exciting when you get that LPO or that LSO, but payments can be a headache, bad headache. And how you're gonna curtail those kind of issues is by looking at the quality of institution that is actually offering you an LPO or an LSO.
So for you as Gatwiri, in terms of looking at doing your due diligence, what are some of the key things that makes you consider this is a good tender to bid for, or this is a good investment to put money into?
Of course, the credit days that the organization is asking for. For me, 30 to 45 days is very healthy, but also pushing to 60 is not so bad. But bills which are going into 90 days, past 90 days, can really be a huge headache. So one of the things I look at is what are the credit days that these people are asking for. Number 2, are the credit days really warranting in terms of the profits, margins that you're going to make out of that contract? Because if I am making 100K profit, it does not make sense for you to stay with my money for 90 days.
Yeah.
You get it? So at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, is there time value for money? Because you could you could be seated with 90k my 90k for 90 days, and by the time that money is coming to me, all the profit I made is gone. In terms of I could have reverted it back into the business. It could have done more. Yeah.
So when you look at the Kenyan corporate space compared to government, where do you think it's safer to invest in? Which tenders are safer for a young entrepreneur to take up?
It's funny because like I'm saying, government has really tried their best to protect the interests of young people who are going to do business for them. And one of the things that the way you can look at it is that government is the biggest economic player in the economy. They are the biggest buyers and they're the biggest sellers in an economy. So any serious entrepreneur can never refuse to do business with government, because they are the biggest drivers of the economy.
But at the same time,
yes,
they are, in terms of risk, you risk delayed payments more in government than in the private sector, don't you think?
Not really. Security is in government as opposed to non-governmental organizations, because the government is a going concern. You get it? You could I have had experiences of entrepreneurs who have had their monies held as much as 4 years, 3 years. But at some point, that money is paid. That is security. Government is an ongoing concern. But if a private entity falls, it has fallen and there is no security to back you up. It's over. Okay, I prefer government. That is me, Gatwiri Kithinji, because I believe I go after these people in government in a special way, because I'm that aggressive and I like tying my loopholes to the extent that I'm sure that I'm not going to suffer out of a bad debt, or I'm not going to suffer out of a pending bill. So my best friend for sure is the government. But I also have portfolios of the private sector. They are good people to me. I mean, I have clients like the UN and the Deloitte. So for me, when it comes to private sector, I will go for really high quality clients, because those are the only clients who are secure. They are stable. They are not easy to collapse. Of course, they are the best payers. Most of them pay you in 30 days. That is the maximum I think I have experienced in terms of the number of days of payments from non-government organizations. But what I can say is that you have to create a balance of both. But you can imagine, if you have 100% government clients, what happens if there are so many pending bills? You're at a disadvantage. But if you have a mix of all clients, small, big, private, public, you are neutralizing the risks that come with having a one stream of clients. So what I can say is that let people try their best to mix in their clients, public, private. Just create a mix of all of them. It gives you a better balance of issues.
All right, and when you started this conversation, one of the things that you mentioned is the fact that you need to know people, you need to network. But the question is, I'm fresh out of college, I'm fresh out of my first job. Where do I place myself? How do I position myself in a way that when I go to bid for a tender, I know the right people?
It's a game of confidence. So I'm full-time in this job. So you can imagine, from Monday to Friday, I'm seeing clients. I am going to assure clients how good I am in whatever I do. So people's skill has really gotten me from the dump, literally, to the heights that I'm operating in today. You have to be able to sell yourself to people, literally sell yourself to people. Show them why you and not the other character. So I would say it's an accumulated level of so many things. Let's say education background. Let's say what you've been able to achieve as a young character in your previous life. Are you joining business bodies? Like you need to show your seriousness in business as an entrepreneur for people to actually look at you and think, wow, we can actually have this in our she can be our vendor or he can be our vendor. There's a way people perceive you at first, and you could be broke for sure, but the way you present yourself can win you some big business. So for me, it's a matter of how I'm connecting with those people, and I make sure I sell myself so well that they don't doubt that I can fail.
All right. Do you think there are tenders that young people should stay away from?
Yeah, absolutely. Capital intensive tenders as young people, I don't think they're the best. But government has so many small businesses that young people can leverage on. So going into construction for sure can hurt you easily. Let's say construction
That's what
road.
big money is.
I know, but you need to go up slowly, because I would tell you, there are jobs where the government has opened young people totally, completely, like supplies of things like toners, stationaries, things like branding works for government institutions. These are, and also corporate t-shirts, caps, mugs, what have you. These are things that come with very heavy budgets, but are good avenues. They are not capital intensive, they make good money, and they will not give you a lot of headache. So at the end of the day, you have to play your cards right. You don't want to go into a project that will eat you up and not make you money. Better do small projects, but accumulate your money slowly and slowly. I may not be in construction right now, but I'm sure 5 years from today, inshallah, I'll be able to do those kind of contracts.
Be able to do roads.
Yeah.
And again, so actually, as we almost wind up our conversation, there's the issue of young people, and so many of them, and especially after the Kibaki administration, so many of them got into procurement because the perception was that is where the money is, that is where the tenders are. When you look back, what are some of the things that you would say you expected that shocked you once you got into the field?
I thought that I would face a lot of opposition, especially from people in procurement.
Yeah.
And I did for sure. And you see, the problem is, and it's across, and it's something that any procurement organization or bodies like Public Procurement Regulatory Authority or the Public Procurement Oversight Authority, they will, if you ask them what are the challenges of working with young people when it comes to tenders and procurement, they will tell you young people barely deliver quality work. And that is a perception that many procurement officers have against the young people. In fact, you could be very good, but the mere fact that you're just a young person, they can easily turn you away because they'll be like, we'll give you 2 million, but we'll know you will not deliver. You understand? Yeah. So there is a perception out there when it comes to procurement officers that young people are jokers when it comes to delivery. But I feel like now there's a cadre of young people coming up, cadre of entrepreneurs in the tender system that are really making a difference in terms of the perception that the procurement officers have against the young people. So what I can say is that we have to be confident as young entrepreneurs. Let us not really buy into that mentality of, no, you guys are young, you guys cannot deliver. How about we go and tell them, yes, we are young, but we are the best and we can deliver. And that has always been who I am. And that is how I've made, things work through the tender system.
Again, in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of tenderpreneurs.
Yeah.
People who will bid for a contract. Once they get the contract and they get the money, they do not deliver. How has that dented the image of young people? young entrepreneurs?
It is terrible. Some of the issues I go through during scrutiny is like you're being called to the boardroom and they want to sign a contract with you. And the things they express to you in the first thing, they look at you and they're like, you're very young. Are you sure you're able to do the work that you want us to sign with you? So I'm used to this kind of issues, by the way, but the moment I start speaking and the moment I show my seriousness and I really want that job so bad, I wake up having signed a contract from that boardroom. So what I can say is that we have to go against the perception of the procurement officers. It is dented. It is for sure dented. But you have to be, like a boy convinces a girl. You have to have your way around the mentality and the psychology of these people. You have to negate it.
So looking back, and especially for you, I want you to take us through the journey you were of making or earning that first million. How did that go? How did you feel?
It was unbelievable. I remember this is a contract I did for a technical and vocational institute because HMG Works Limited works with technical and vocational institute to equip engineering laboratories, that is automotive, electrical engineering and mechanical engineering. I note this is where the next skills of people are gonna come from.
Where the big
exactly
is,
Vision 2030 is actually capitalizing on the TVET system so much, and a lot of investors are coming in. So when I got my first million, I remember I just sat with my board of directors and they looked at me and they were like, you did us proud. And I couldn't believe it because it was within a short span of period of time.
How long was it?
I made my first million. Within a year, I had made my first million. So it was exciting. It was very nice. And it made me realize that actually money is out there. There is more potential to actually make more. The moment you get your first million, you realize, damn, you can actually make a million. Then you want two, then you want more. So it's like a motivation. It's a bad motivation. You want to wake up every day because that 1 million ceases to be enough. The moment you get it, then you want more. Then it becomes nice and hectic at the same time.
All right, so as we wind up, one of the things that I would really want to know, when you look back, what are some of the key lessons that you have learned since you started, and also to a young entrepreneur who wants to try their hand at a government and bid for a government tender? What are the things that they really need to know?
I'll tell you for sure. On this line of business, hard work. I know this is so cliche, but hard work is key for sure. This one is where you put in effort from Monday to Sunday, sometimes Monday to Friday. You're out there. There is a lot of patience that is required of you in the tender system. A very keen eye to detail, because one small mistake, you're out of a very huge contract. So there are aspects of life that over time I have learned are very crucial. And that is like the aspect of being patient as an entrepreneur. So what I will say to young people today is that do not be discouraged. Do not run away. It's good to be a friend of the government because the government is a big player in the economy. But look at the quality of the institutions that you want to do contracts with. Let people be accustomed to do business with government. It's okay to do taxes with government, because I know young people really don't like business because of KRA. But you know what? You cannot trade with government without paying taxes. So get your tax compliances correct. File those monies as they come in, and you'll be surprised. The game just changes a day at a time, and it never goes down. It can only go upwards.
Wow. I I think that's a good place to end it. Gatwiri, thank you so much for making the time to come in to share your experience on the Business Hour podcast. All right, thank you so much. And that's all the time we have for you on this episode of the Business Hour podcast. My name is Jimmy Bogan. Like we always say right here on the Business Hour podcast, that every hour is Business Hour.